you want to make sure you're engaging on LinkedIn as well. You don't just create a profile and then walk away, right? So think about posting a couple times a week to LinkedIn about things that matter to your audience. A theme for my week this week seems to be know your audience, right? So know who's reading your profile. Is it people in your industry? More than likely it is, that kind of thing. So who's reading it? What do you need to be posting about that is impactful to your industry? Keep the personal stuff to a minimum on LinkedIn. We're seeing more and more of those personal things creep onto LinkedIn as we sort of mix our personal and professional lives. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you want to be careful. This is not Facebook. It's not Twitter. It's not TikTok. So this is not your opportunity to complain. This is your opportunity to bring forward your expertise in your industry. So not only posting, but also starting to engage with others. Thoughtful comments on other people's posts will also help you get noticed because LinkedIn rewards usage, right? The more you're using their platform, the more likely you are to appear.
Podcast, where curiosity meets career excellence. I'm Dr. Mo Anderson, and I invite you to join me on a journey of personal growth. In each weekly episode, we dive into inspiring and often hilarious conversations with global experts. From communication mastery to wise investments, we've got you covered. My guest today is Michelle Merritt, an amazing businesswoman who spent decades as a Fortune 500 recruiter and corporate culture executive. Now, she focuses on coaching executives and leaders through career transitions. I've asked her to share the secrets of increasing the impact of the job search process, from resume writing, one's LinkedIn profile, to negotiating offers and raises and promotions and all that stuff. So you want to stay tuned. Whether you're unemployed, looking to hire, or ready to change positions, this is a conversation you need to hear. So thank you for joining us. And if you're new to the show or a returning visitor, let's make this official and hit that subscribe button. Now pump up the volume and let's go. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Dr. Mo, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be with you.
Awesome. You are bringing some good stuff here. I've even got my notepad ready.
Okay.
I can use some pointers. It's never too late to learn. In the industries and the way we do things are changing all the time too. I mean, back in the day, there was no LinkedIn for HR managers to look at, no Google reputation, and we wouldn't dare ask for more than that we were offered. So things are changing in a good way, but we need to be on top of those changes. And you're here to share with us best practices.
I'm excited to do it.
Let's start with the resume. What are some major do's and don'ts for a career resume?
So I think one of the most important things is to know the direction you want to go, right? So we tell people frequently, identify where you're headed. Be mindful about where you're headed, because the resume, while it's about you, it's not for you. It's for the reader. And so often we write a resume based on what we think we would want to read, and we don't put ourselves in the shoes of the reader. So if we understand where we're headed, then we can understand what that reader wants out of the resume. And what we want to make sure of is that we're highlighting accomplishments and achievements with data and metrics where available and appropriate to really highlight the impact of our work and what we've done up to this point that will make the reader want to know more about us.
That makes a lot of sense. That is for the reader. You focus on who's going to be making the decision and what they might want to hear. I'm wondering, is it important I've heard people say you should kind of customize or tailor it for the company, do some research on the company and the position. Does that matter, or is just one good resume going to do it.
I think one good base resume is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has your accomplishments and your achievements, things like that. You may find yourself making small adjustments to a document based on what you know that company wants to talk about or what is a priority to that reader. So you may rearrange some bullet points, things like that. The good news about an accomplishment focused resume is your accomplishments don't change.
True.
Right? Your accomplishments are what they are. We might phrase them differently depending on the reader, things like that, or we may choose certain ones to highlight for certain companies. But having that master resume that has all of your accomplishments and your achievements based again on where you're headed. We all have that thing back there from 20 years ago that we're so proud of, but it really doesn't apply to where we're going anymore. So we want to be careful to start stripping out things that aren't impactful, especially things that get back 10, 15 years or later.
Okay.
And then you can make adjustments as needed.
So for someone like me, I'm a boomer who might be, trying to transition or see a position where I can move up the corporate ladder. For me, I mean, if I'm 30 or 20, something that happened, 5-10 years ago might not be relevant. But for me, there are some things, some milestones or achievements that are that old. Do I include those and not include the dates? Or, boomers really get concerned about, I don't want ageism, but at the same time, I've done some pretty boss things. So how do we balance that?
Right. So go back only as far as you absolutely need to and have a second set of eyes on that resume saying, do you really need this? Right. Because again, we tend to get attached to things.
Right. We're emotional about it.
Right. Exactly. I can think of an award or two or projects that led to big awards in my career 20, 25 years ago. And I want so badly to still include them in my resume and LinkedIn, that kind of thing. But in truth, they're not as impactful to everyone else as they are to me. Okay. So the other thing I'll remind all of us is, the average reader, the first time the resume hits the desk of HR, the average reader is in their mid-20s, which means they were born sometime between 1997 and 2000.
Okay.
So when we have information on our resume that is as old or older than the person reading the document, it becomes hard to relate. Okay. It's not that someone's purposely discriminating, but it's really hard for the reader to relate to someone who was in the work world and graduating from college before they were born.
Yeah, I get that the gatekeepers can really make a difference.
They can.
Write in one of my other lives, and it's trying to get your manuscript intended for boomers past this 20-year-old recent college graduate.
Right.
and they're not understanding the plot because they don't understand the lives of the characters. But it's important as well because you want to appeal to a diverse group. You don't know who might be reading it, male or female, but do keep in mind the person in that position tends to be young because they got to go through in book writing, we call it the slush pile. I don't know what they call it in corporate America, but
probably the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots to go through because there are tons of applications now with so many people out of work. And somebody's got to filter through those. Wow. I've already learned some really good things. What about your network? Again, a lot of companies are merging, downsizing, laying off people. And I see, particularly on LinkedIn and also just even on social media, people trying to encourage people to refer them for jobs or perhaps hire them. How do you really do that in a way that's effective and professional?
So I think there's a couple of things to do. Number one is understand that you do have a network. People tell me all the time, I don't have a good network. But you may not have a strong network. You might not have been cultivating your network, but everyone has a network because our network is literally made up of everyone we know. Right?
Okay.
So, everyone that has had my job can tell you a story about someone's neighbor's brother's cousin's sister's friend who was the key to opening the door for the job of their dreams. So we want to make sure that we start connecting with everyone in our network. Everything is an interview, right? And I think we tend to miss that sometimes. Every conversation is in some way or form, some shape or form, an interview. And so starting to identify who's in your network. I make an actual written list. My tech savvy friends do this in an Excel spreadsheet, but a written list of who all do I know. And then I start to mind map, if you will, what I know about them. Where do they work? Where do they worship? Who's their significant other? Where do their kids go to school? What's their alma mater? Who do they drink with on Friday, brunch with on Sunday? Right? Because that will start to help me understand, okay, if I need to get here, perhaps this is someone I should talk to. Or, oh, I forgot they were married to that person and that person works over here. That sort of thing, right? So I can be more strategic about my approach to my network. And I break my network into 3 categories. One is what I call the 2 a.m. group. These are the people you can call in the middle of the night who will willingly get out of bed and help you. Right?
Yes.
So that's a short list for most of us.
Now we call it the person who'll help you hide the body. So,
so it's funny. My best friend calls it your friends with the shovel. For that same, I always say dig you out of trouble. She says bury a body. Right? So you do you.
Yours is more PC, but
it's true. It's true. But these are the people who are really there for you, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's our first group. But what I always remind people of is that the people on your 2 a.m. list may not really know all the details of what's going on, right? So for example, one of my sisters would be on my 2 a.m. list. We talk regularly, right? But but if you asked her what's going on in my daily work life right now, she'd give you a really surface answer because most of the time we're talking about kids and her new boyfriend and marriage and what's going on with our parents and, all the things, right? And, oh, how's work? Okay, great. It's fine. And we move on. So we don't really always talk to that 2 a.m. group about what's going on. So don't ever assume that your 2 a.m. group really knows what's happening until you reach out to them and say, hey, I trust you. This is happening in my life. Can we talk? Right.
Makes sense.
And then the next group is what I always call the 6 a.m. group. Right. So they're the people who will happily help you outside of the normal course of the business day. But they're not necessarily the people that are going to get out of bed with the shovel. Right.
Right.
And then the last group is what I refer to as the 8 a.m. group. They are the people who throughout the course of the day will happily help, but probably not going out of their way outside of their normal day. And these lists get bigger as we go. But as you start to identify who's on each list, you can start to then mind map, as we were talking about, who they are and what you know about them. You can start to identify who to reach out to next. And then the key to every one of those conversations is to make sure that you're asking, who else do I need to know? How can I help you? Because networking is never one-sided. How can I help you? And who else do I need to know? Those are the 2 vital questions in every networking conversation.
I want you to define a term you've used a few times in the event someone is not familiar with it, mind mapping.
Oh, it is really where you start to map out. I do it as on a piece of paper where you put the person's name in the center of the piece of paper and you start to map out and write out what you know about the person. Right. So mine will have, my colleague Deborah's name in the center. And then out from that, I may know she's married to Steve. She is the CEO of DNS. Okay. She, this sort of thing, right? She's a baseball mom, all those sort of things, right? And I can start to identify, okay, maybe I need to talk to her about this, or perhaps she would have an in to talk to someone over here, that kind of thing.
Okay. I like that. I like that process. I mentioned LinkedIn a few times, and I've heard that, it's one of the top professional platforms now. And I've heard HR and recruiters always look at job candidates' LinkedIn profile now. Is that true? And is that profile important in their decision making?
I think it is. So yes, it is true that they're looking. And what's important is quality information in the profile. Right? It does not have to be an exact match to your resume, but understand that that profile makes you searchable, right? So a hiring manager or a recruiter or an HR person, they're going into LinkedIn. They have a different type of subscription to LinkedIn than you and I do. And so they're going in and they're putting in keywords and phrases for the types of people that they're looking for, right? So maybe it's a technology person who has certain software experience. Perhaps it is COO and they are looking for certain skill sets in mergers and acquisitions, something like that, right? So they're putting in these keywords and phrases, and the profiles that are popping up are the ones who have those keywords and phrases involved. So the more complete your profile is, the more searchable you become.
Excellent. That makes me think about, I've had people reach out to me that are in different industries than healthcare, and they're not reaching out for me to speak or some of my other side hustles, but they want me, to apply for a position. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know anything about this. And they'll say, but you have such leadership experience and you're a great communicator. And that's what we need. We can teach you the other stuff.
Right.
So, I make that point is in saying that, is it also important that your LinkedIn profile reflects soft skills that you may have and not just accomplishments that are, shown by a certificate or a course that you took?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So you want to make sure you're engaging on LinkedIn as well. You don't just create a profile and then walk away, right? So think about posting a couple times a week to LinkedIn about things that matter to your audience. A theme for my week this week seems to be know your audience, right? So know who's reading your profile. Is it people in your industry? More than likely it is, that kind of thing. So who's reading it? What do you need to be posting about that is impactful to your industry? Keep the personal stuff to a minimum on LinkedIn. We're seeing more and more of those personal things creep onto LinkedIn as we sort of mix our personal and professional lives. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you want to be careful. This is not Facebook. It's not Twitter. It's not TikTok. So this is not your opportunity to complain. This is your opportunity to bring forward your expertise in your industry. So not only posting, but also starting to engage with others. Thoughtful comments on other people's posts will also help you get noticed, because LinkedIn rewards usage, right? The more you're using their platform, the more likely you are to appear.
And you make a good point too, because, we do have a different type of profile than the HR managers. I think they pay for a professional type of profile and get additional data and so forth. But I can see, even on my profile, I can see insights. I can see who from my company, who from my industry. So that information is there just within a few clicks. It's not just who liked it or who commented, but lots of people could be engaging with you and you're not even aware of it because they didn't comment or say anything, but you'll see that you have some interesting views, and that might even lead to an opportunity for connection, right?
You bet. If someone is viewing my profile, I will often reach out to them directly and just invite them to connect and say, as long as the profile appears to be a legitimate profile, of course I look at it first, but I'll say, hey, I noticed you viewed my profile, happy to connect. And I'll just go ahead and send them a request to connect.
That's a great tip. So let's move from getting the attention of the hiring managers and submitting your application to now they want to do an interview with you. So, heart beating, all of that. trying to prep, role play, all the things we do. What are some important tips in a job interview? So
I'll say what I said before, know your audience, right? So know who you're meeting with, and you can ask the hiring manager or the person doing the scheduling who all will be in the room. Right. So that you can begin doing your due diligence. Look up their LinkedIn profiles, look at their bio on the website, things like that. Try to stay away from things like TikTok, Facebook, those sort of profiles. Don't dig into their personal life. That's not okay. But understand what's going on and how they represent themselves so that you can find out some things about their history. Maybe you have the same alma mater. Maybe you have a similar background, but you can also start to get a feel for, when you look at their bio, what may be important to them. So you're crafting your conversation and the stories that you want to tell based on what you believe to be important to your audience. If you're an executive and you're meeting with a board of directors, for example, the board is going to want very different information than, say, your fellow executive peers when you may be interviewing with them, or the team that you're interviewing with. So you want to make sure that you're mindful of the language that you're using and the topics that you're discussing. Now, I will also say this. I'm not a big fan of role play in interviews. And the reason for that is because I find that when we over rehearse and then someone asks us a question in a way that we didn't rehearse it, suddenly it throws us off. And then we're in a spiral. But if instead we prepare topics for discussion around the topics we believe will be asked in the interview, right? So you're a COO and you know that this company may be maybe they just went through a merger and now they're in that integration phase of integrating two companies, right? So you know that likely there are going to be conversations around that. Know the stories you want to tell, the examples you want to give, those accomplishments and those achievements from your resume. Know those and keep those stories under about 2 minutes in length. We want succinct discussion and description so that we can give the interviewer opportunity to continue the conversation.
What about, is it a good idea, particularly for executives, to also make yourself familiar with the company's pain points?
Absolutely.
And in the event you ask a question, I wouldn't want to reference it directly, but, to be able to weave in some solutions and some actionable steps in your response.
I love that. And I think it's also important to detect the themes in the interview. So a client recently said to me, it seemed like every question they asked was around margin. And I couldn't quite figure out why. And I said, more than likely, they're having a problem there. Right. Look for the theme in their questions. If someone is continually asking you about managing toxic people and the meeting after the meeting and how you handle discipline with your team, things like that, there's a people problem happening. Right. And so don't be afraid to say to the interviewer, I'm detecting a theme here. Tell me what's going on. Right? This is as much an interview of them as it is of you. And if they're not allowing that to happen, that's a red flag for me, especially the higher up you go in the organization. This should be a conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good answer. Good answer. So those are things that you should do, positive things. What are some common mistakes people make during the interview process?
Talking too much, talking too fast, right? And not being well prepared. So when we are nervous, we tend to speak very quickly, especially if English is our second language. So what will happen is we'll start talking even faster. And it becomes hard to understand. Then we get nervous. Then it gets worse. We start to sweat. The whole thing goes awry, right? It just spirals. You're right. And so when we can find a way to keep ourselves calm, know the things that calm you. One of the things that always calms people is being prepared, right? But again, not being overly prepared. There is that minute. Remember back to your college days, there is that moment where you say, I can't study anymore. I either know it or I don't. Right? Same thing happens in the interview. And so prepare, know your data, know your numbers. You can take your notes with you. People often think you can't take notes with you into an interview. You absolutely can. You can have notes with you if you're on a Zoom call, right? One of the things I do, I use a Mac. And so I will put my notes up on either side of my screen, tape them up to either side of my screen so that I am looking left to right instead of constantly looking down in the conversation. So I hold eye contact, even on Zoom. And so, really starting to engage in that way will make a difference. But staying calm, making it a conversation. One of the questions I always start with is, how can I help? Right? I'm excited to meet you. I'm excited to learn how I can help you.
Wow. That would certainly get my attention. It's something you rarely hear from anyone. Right. It often comes across in that talking too much is what can you do for me? And what are you prepared to do for me? And instead of I'm here to help, Absolutely. I'm here to make things better. That would Absolutely. Be something I'd love to hear. Is it wise to have some questions ready to ask them, or do you look for that theme and kind of develop questions based on what they're asking you?
If you can make them up as you go based on what they're asking you, great, do that. But I always have a couple backup questions, right? So one of the questions I don't ask is, tell me about your culture. Here's why. Everyone is trained at that company to recite what is on the website. Right. So instead, I may be asking, well, it sounds like you're going through a lot of change right now. How are you communicating that change to the team? What are the challenges that if I'm going to be leading this team, what are the challenges the team's facing right now? And what are they doing really well?
Wow.
Right? How we communicate, that when we communicate with the team, we define our culture. And I'm asking similar questions to each group that I'm interviewing. I'm asking my future team, what's working for you? What isn't? What do you need from this person in this role? Right? My peers, I'm saying to them, okay, guys, how do I help you? How do I come alongside and partner with you and support your teams, and we move the organization forward? And of course, to the board or to the CEO, I may be asking, what's your goal for this role, and how do I support you while still taking care of my team, etc. So I'm asking questions that prove that I'm a partner and that prove collaboration. Because the number one thing we know that people look for when it comes to soft skills is the ability to communicate and the ability to collaborate cross-functionally, both internally and externally.
That's the number one thing. Interesting. Okay. So we're walking through this process.
Yeah.
You've gotten in the door, you aced the interview, and now they're making an offer. Let's talk about the money. I know people are on the edge of their seats because that's where most of us, particularly women, but not just women, just get very uncomfortable with this part of the process because we don't have training in it. So how do you negotiate? They made the offer. How do you negotiate a higher salary offer? Or you're already, on the job and it's time for your review, and there are a number of ways that you may need to negotiate a higher salary offer, but how do you do it? Really, I want to know too.
Okay. So a couple things to think about. Number one, if you're in the interview process, hopefully you've had the conversation long before the offer comes. So you've had some clarity, right? So a recruiter or a hiring manager may say to you, where do you need to be? Right? What's your salary expectation? A couple things I never do. Number one, this is the one time I answer a question with a question. By saying, you know what, tell me what your range is for this position, and I will be transparent with you as to whether or not I can make that work. So let's say that as an executive, your base salary expectations are $500,000 to $600,000. Okay, great. I'm not going to give a range, because when I give a range, what I tell people is that I'll accept the bottom number. So if I said 500 to 600 base plus bonus, what I've really told someone is I'll accept this offer for 500,000. That's $100,000 I'm leaving on the table. Right? So never give a range, even though we're so tempted to do so. Instead, we're going to ask them, what is the range for the position? They're going to answer, and they're going to say 450 to 525. And you may say to them, so you're aware I'm at the top end of your range, but I'm excited about this opportunity and I want to talk about it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. For people who are not executives, sometimes they're not looking at six figures. They're just excited to get an offer, period, or they're doing everything online. But some of the people you're talking with are not that forthcoming, even if you ask. So how do they, or they're just insistent that you say a number? Because it sounds like a range is not a good thing to do. What is the best way to research that so that, you're saying something that just doesn't, take your offer off the table or take you out of consideration? So
there are a lot of states now that require salary ranges. to be listed in the job description. Now, unfortunately, some companies are being less scrupulous and they're putting really wide ranges in these and just, filling in some sort of bizarre numbers. For the most part, though, we're finding that companies who are required to do it are putting in some legitimate salary ranges. So that should help. I will tell you, here in Indiana, I live in Indianapolis, and here in Indiana where I live, it's not required that they put a salary range in there. So a couple of things you want to do. You want to start researching sites like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, etc., so that you can get a feel for salary ranges in your industry, in that vertical, your community, things like that, because all of those things will make a difference. When we're talking about non-executive positions, I still think it's perfectly acceptable when someone says, where do you need to be? To say, again, can you give me the salary range? And I'll tell you if I can make it work. Right. Most of the time, the recruiter will give you the salary range that's there. What you don't want to do, and we had a client do this, unfortunately, recently against some of our better advice, was he went in, he knew the top end, they were offering him the top end, and he went in and asked for more, even though his original request was below that. They knew he was going to be more expensive. They made him an offer at the top end. He went and asked for even more, and it was a sizable amount more, and they pulled the offer. He was a bit surprised by that. But you want to make sure that you're engaging with someone in a way that's fair as well. You can always ask for more. That's fine. But if you've said, I will take this $70,000, right? Their top end of their range is $85,000, and they know they're going to make that offer at 85, and now you come back and ask for 100, we're going to have a problem on our hands, right? We want to be realistic about where we're at, and also remember that there are a lot of other things that make up compensation, right? It's not just that base salary number. It could be bonus potential. If someone is saying, well, there's a 50% bonus or 100% bonus potential, what I'm immediately asking is, can you give me the average bonus payout for the last 5 years? And if the person says, oh, well, this is a new role, so we really don't have that. Okay, what is the average bonus payout for the other people in the salary band? Right. I want to know what other people have had for the last 5 years at this level, because it will help. If suddenly 100% bonus potential, but the average payout's only been 25%, that tells me something.
And we get caught up on that. Just even the phrase, just the idea of getting a bonus sometimes, and don't think to dive deeper into, so what does that mean? Because the bonus here and the bonus there, like you said, and the 5 year too, because economies fluctuate, businesses give a bonus sometimes and sometimes they don't. So that asking for that span, that average is just genius. These are some brilliant tips. Thank you.
You're absolutely. The reason I ask about the 5 years is because I want a pre-pandemic number to now, because every business was impacted by the pandemic. Some, if you were manufacturing vaccines, you probably had a bigger bonus than someone who worked in hospitality, right? But there was a big shift for all of us. And so we want that average there.
All right. The final question, there is a lot of research showing women often do not attempt to negotiate salary offers, and I alluded to that earlier. Why is that, and what are some pitfalls for women in salary negotiation?
So I think one of the pitfalls is being afraid that we're going to be seen as bossy. We're going to be seen as other B words that I don't say, things like that, right? And instead, what we want to do is come to the table prepared and also never desperate. So we all have been in points in our lives where we really need the next opportunity. That's understandable. But we don't want to approach negotiation out of desperation. And because if you're doing that, it's easy to be taken advantage of, right? If an employer has an issue with you coming to the table and asking for more money that you can demonstrate that you deserve, right? That's the kicker here, is anytime we're asking for more compensation, we want to demonstrate the ROI for the employer. What do you bring to the table that's going to make their investment in you worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And be able to articulate that clearly, right? So if you receive an offer, you would like it to be more in this area or that. The written response may read something like, thank you for the offer. I am excited about this opportunity, and it will be easier for me to say yes if. So we're approaching it from, I want this to work. I want this to happen, but here are the things I need. And here's why, what I will be doing right away to help make that a worthy investment for you.
That's fair. That's very fair. And you're right about that desperation, especially if people have been out of work a while and you almost exude it. I mean, you can feel it. It's just like, I'll do anything if you give me this job. Right. And unfortunately, some places, some hiring managers will take advantage of that because they know they can get you at a steal. Yeah.
And I can tell you, I left $10,000 on the table in my first opportunity in my 20s. And I made the mistake of doing that math. And if I had invested that $10,000 every year in my 401k, we're talking about $1.4 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Just with the compounding and the passage of time. Oh, no, don't do the math. Don't do the math.
Right. It was sad.
I have a son about to have his first child, and he was talking to me the other day about the cribs and the diapers as they're getting ready. And that's what I said, son, don't do the math. You do not do the math.
No. Don't do it.
Some things you just leave and you just accept, and particularly in his case, but yeah, we live and learn. And what I appreciate about that is that now you're sharing with us and educating us and helping us, coaching us so that we don't leave money on the table and don't miss out on opportunities because we didn't know. Any final career advice, questions, or something I may have missed, something you commonly are asked or coached about, anything else you want to share?
I always say about salary negotiation as well is don't be afraid to say the number out loud. So I alluded to my best friend who calls it friends with shovels, right? We've been friends a very long time. And I walked her through her salary negotiation about a year ago. And we've been friends for almost 20 years. And I said, I need to know your numbers. And I might as well have asked her weight. Right? It was, we have to talk about the number. Yes, we have to talk about the number. There's no reason we shouldn't be saying these numbers out loud. Right? We empower one another when we talk about the numbers and when we help each other understand what is really available. And one of the ways that we can really be held down and held back is when we're told that we can't talk about these things. Right? Because society it's not appropriate to talk about money, things like this, right? When we talk about the numbers, we help one another.
And in the past, companies did that as well, told you not to discuss your salaries, and their motives were not good in doing that because they didn't want you to know, particularly for women, that your male colleague doing the same work was making 20, 30 grand more than you. Yeah.
Hence the Lilly Ledbetter Act under President Obama. Yeah.
Yes. Thank goodness. So, Michelle, this has just been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and your talent and this really great information. I mean, this is a key for folks. Please like, share, comment. We need to make sure everyone out there job hunting and transitioning to jobs, changing jobs, hears this and has this information because it's going to have a ripple effect on their family for generations to come. It really does make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for your time and support of this woman-owned indie podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share for more like this. Until next time, be safe and be well. Thank you. And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review,
Renew and renew. Thank you.